What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Paper Movies, a novelization book club. Today we'll be discussing our pick for September, which is a novelization to King Kong. I don't have my copy on me right now, so Matthew, can you tell us who the novelization was by?
The story was conceived by Edgar Wallace and Marion C. Cooper, and the novelization is by Delos W. Lovelace.
Thank you. Yep. It is the now just to clarify, it is not a novelization to the Peter Jackson version with like Adrian Brody and Jack Black. It's the novelization to the original 30s classic, which Matthew, I think you watched today, right?
I did, yes. That movie
I
was
didn't.
released in 1933, I believe,
Yes.
and the copyright to the novelization shows 1932.
Yes.
That's interesting. Came out a
So
year
it may
before.
have been.
I did some research on this. Actually,
Okay.
it was a favor that one of the screenwriters asked the author of this book to just write a story to promote it.
Hey.
So this is like the original novelization.
That's awesome.
It might be the first one. It's the oldest one I've ever heard of, but it's not not the typical. Well, to explain what paper movies really is, we get typically back in the day, the 70s and 80s, were the heyday of these movie studios wanted a way to promote a movie. So they would hire authors to convert the screenplays into novels. And they call it a novelization of the screenplay. Which this still happens today somewhat, but like typically it's made so that the studio can promote a movie. And
Mhm.
also because VHS wasn't there yet and people didn't own movies.
Right.
So
I
oftentimes
hate.
the only way you'd experience Star Wars again back in 77 is to read the novelization until it came on TV.
Yep.
So I do also have to clarify. Originally, we were also known as Men with Beards Podcast. So I think now we should call ourselves Two and a Half Beards Podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
Or the beards and stubble. Maybe.
That's a little
Um,
longer than a stubble.
like two and a half bearded men.
Yeah.
But yeah, so as always, we'll start with a little quick summary of the story. So I'm pretty sure most of you who have seen King Kong know it's about an expedition with that's kind of led by Carl Denham, who's kind of in show business. He uh, requests Jack Driscoll, who to sail him across the seas to a mysterious island known as Skull Island. And before they leave, Carl Denham recruits a actress named Anne Darrow. They travel to Skull Island, and Anne is eventually kidnapped by the natives and used as a sacrifice to Kong, which is a 30-foot ape, who is, as he is always referred as King of Skull Island, and basically, yeah, as also referred the eighth wonder of the world.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
They eventually kidnap Kong, bring him to New York City, and well, let's just say a lot of fun stuff happens.
Yeah.
So it's a
Which is,
classic adventure story.
yeah.
And it feels like an adventure pulp. More so than I think anything we've read on here before.
We
Now, you guys would know more than I would. Was this like the first real monster movie?
I don't think it was the first. It was
It was the first big monster movie. It was one of the first big movies for RKO Pictures, I can tell you that. They were fairly new at the time. Also
Okay.
famous for Gone with the Wind.
Yeah.
That was their other big one that they did in that time.
Because I was thinking too, a lot of credit goes to Jaws for really being like the first summer blockbuster type film, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I kind of got the vibes like when I know we're going to be talking about the novelization here too, but like the film, I thought they were so close together, like not really much separated the two. But like this, when I watched the movie, I was like, how is this not considered like a major blockbuster type film? Because it was done pretty well. The film was as for the time 33 to
Oh
have
yeah,
this giant monster on this island. It was incredible, for its time. I thought. I
yeah.
just thought it was people don't
It's
really
about
talk about it as
distribution. At the time, you had a lot. It up until oh god, the 40s, 50s, the movie studios owned movie theaters, and so if your movie was only going to be shown at the theaters that they owned, and it was just the worst
Mhm.
when it came to like just what's the word monopolies. It, the studios had monopolies on every aspect of Hollywood. Um, and then they kind of still do now, but it's different because product placement's a thing now. Product placement was not a thing at this time
Right.
because it didn't have to be because they own the theaters. It would be like an RKO um distribute theater that this would play at, you know.
Okay.
So like things were just different then. It was also it's a weird movie. It's a weird book too,
It
in like
is.
a good way. But it's very different for the time. It's sort of like I think that King Kong is one of those things where it was ahead of its time.
I agree
I
with that.
was yeah, I was you kind of like were like really on the nose there because like when I was reading it, I was actually convinced that this was written like recently.
Yeah,
Like um like someone to say like, "Hey, there's not a novelization to King Kong. We should write one." And like it was like done like maybe the 90s or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
like what those encyclopocalypse guys do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
And it but going back to like was this is like the first monster film, like it is kind of funny how like this movie inspired like, the big franchise that we actually just saw recently like where Kong fights Godzilla.
Right.
huh.
And but it's funny because this version of Kong would not even have a chance against Godzilla because he's like
He
a
was
No,
30 foot like a 30-foot ape. Yeah,
yeah,
Godzilla's like a
him and that Anne Darrow, right, would that's how this Kong would be to the modern day King Kong. He just pick this Kong up with his hand and fling him across the island.
Mhm. But what did you guys like how do you think the book compared to the film?
it's pretty spot on. I will say they add the spider pit scene is in the book, and I wanted to talk. This is like the number one thing I wanted to talk about. I don't know if Adam, I'm pretty sure, is familiar with this, but there's a segment of film that's lost to time where there was a scene where the uh, the sailors had to fight spiders,
I
and it got cut from the film, and it has just disappeared.
I did notice that, I remember, like, that was just like, "Wait a minute, like, I don't remember that." And I was wondering why that's why they added that scene in, the Peter Jackson version where they
Well,
fight all the giant insects, and go
have you
ahead.
seen the documentary he made where he tried to recreate it in stop motion to put into the original film, and
I
they
have
couldn't
not
do
seen
it?
that, actually.
Just wild. Yeah,
Yeah.
all the bugs in the Peter Jackson one. So
Yeah, were they like big worms that ate people too, right?
worms, there's like
Yeah.
flying bugs. I
Yeah, I
had the
mean,
misfortune of watching the director's cut of that movie not too long ago.
I just bought that,
It's like
actually.
4 hours.
I'm surprised Peter Jackson didn't turn it into a trilogy.
Well,
Each movie 3 hours.
this is before he sold out to Warner Brothers. It's an
I
Oscar picture.
I was actually impressed by it, like with how much it was, you know, relatable to the film, and
Mhm.
except for like the deleted like spider scene, but it was the only thing that I would say was a little different, which now that I think about it, it's not that different compared to the films. Like when they got to New York at the end, felt a little bit more rushed. But then again, in the
Yeah,
film, it's pretty rushed too. It's just like, hey guys,
right.
I found a giant ape. The ape, you know,
Yeah, it was like the
escapes
last
and
5 minutes. It was like the last 5 minutes of the movie.
Well, let's let's think of it this way. Would we say it was rushed if it wasn't for like the 76 Kong movie where he gets gunned down on the World Trade Center, which that
I
goes on forever, or like the Peter Jackson one where everything takes forever to be done, you know?
like it takes like an hour for them to meet Kong, and then
Oh yeah.
another hour for Kong to like kill everything in sight, and then an hour for Kong to die.
Yeah. But at least that one wasn't horribly graphic like the 76 Kong.
Yeah,
Well,
the
I mean,
70s. Go ahead, Matthew.
it does make sense though that it wouldn't last too long because it's like he is this ancient being that's thrown into the modern world, and our technology
Mhm.
takes him out. And at the end, the last line is like, "Oh, it wasn't us or
Beauty.
the
It was
guns or
the
the planes. It was the
airplanes.
yeah, it was the beauty that killed the beast." And it's like,
Little
Like
those
I'm
slow
guys
pretty
on
killed.
the nose, but it very of the time.
Yeah, the one difference. I mean, you mentioned the spider thing, but I'm pretty sure the dinosaur was a triceratops in the book,
Yes.
wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay, and in the movie, it's the Tyrannosaurus Rex
Well, there's that
and a
too. They
and the
just didn't have
Stegosaurus.
the author didn't have that name.
Right. I guess,
The meat
yeah, in the
eater with
30s.
4 arms
Yeah.
is basically how he put it.
I actually saw I was watching a YouTube video where this was around the time like they incorporated another monster that was actually this is around the time when we got one of the more famous sightings of Nessie. So they
Mhm.
wanted to incorporate that into this movie. Like if you saw like the guys get attacked by a long neck water dinosaur,
Yeah.
and and I think it was supposed to be Brontosaurus, and then that's just kind of how you that's how you know they didn't have a lot of research on dinosaurs. Like Brontosaurus wouldn't eat people, but
No.
yeah.
It's funny, like, in the film, every time it would, come up out of the water would just be pouring out of its mouth
Uh-huh.
every time. I just thought that was funny. I was like, "Oh, it's just a hollow thing that they brought it up
Yeah.
out of the water and just emptied itself out." I thought it was kinda funny. Just, like, to constantly be spewing water from its mouth.
But the author I thought portrayed the characters pretty well. Like Carl Denham's, this showman type, and
Mhm.
Mhm.
the author, I'm not sure if you guys listened to the audiobook because I did.
I did.
They were it was really spot even with the performance, like the guy that narrated it did very well with that as well. And it was I did like that they incorporated some of the famous lines. I think one of my I was just wondering if they would include this one. It was the scene where Ann Darrow's talking to Jack Driscoll. He's like, "I've never been on a boat like this before." He's like, "Well, I've never been on a boat like this with a woman before," you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't really because I watched the film today and finished the book a week or 2 ago,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to remember how the relationship went in the book because in the film, it went really fast when
It
Anne
went
and
fast the book too.
Driscoll, right, they met, and then all of a sudden, like, they see each other once, and then the next time they meet, he's like, "I love you." And it's like, "Wait, what?" And in the book, I don't remember that being that quick. It was more of like the relationship built up to the end, but in the movie, they meet, fall in love immediately, and then when we're back in New York, like, "Oh, they're getting married tomorrow." It's like, that was fast. I thought that was silly.
I was also gonna address something that you kind of touched on, Jeremy, is like how the '70s version was a little graphic. There was I felt bad for some of the there was like people in the movie where, like there was a woman in the original, there was a woman sleeping, and like she just gets picked up by Kong because he thinks she's Anne, and he's just like, "Oh, you're not Anne," and just drops her off the dead gum building.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that happened again in the '70s version where like he picks up a girl from a train, he's just like, "Oh, you're not," and just like flings her across town.
That happens in the Peter Jackson version too. He keeps dropping women. He
And
throws like 5 of them.
yeah, the '70s version was gross. Like, a guy gets ripped in half, one guy gets eaten, and a group of people get stepped on and everything. But
Uh-huh.
it's
It's a
it was it
bizarre remake.
that's where you can also tell it wasn't, it was written a little. It wasn't as graphic as like the movie. Like, I don't remember like a lot of people being like, they're in the film. You see people getting stepped on a lot, and unless I just missed it, but I don't remember
Well,
a
this
lot of.
is this is right around the time the pre-FDA
Mhm,
or the MPAA, my bad. This is when they started putting the codes in because we had a lot of violent gangster films.
mhm,
Because the 20s, that's a wild time for films. You have like dudes kissing other dudes on the mouth. Nudity was the thing you'd see often. Like just all sorts of things. I mean, the first decapitation ever put in a movie is in a movie from 1916. So this is right in this era. Like Scarface, I think came out the same year as this, the original Scarface, and you had guidelines that they
mhm.
they had to follow, so you couldn't be as graphic.
Yeah, it's
Like, you
also
have to be smart about it.
yeah, and it was just like what I was mentioning earlier, like, and it was addressed in the comments, like, but the with like the women being dropped in that wasn't in the novelization. So yeah, that must have been one of the things that was like, yeah, let's not include that, for censorship reasons. Never mind. Sorry.
Censorship.
Yeah.
Um, even like on the graphic uh, thing here, whenever they're on the island and they're crossing over that wooden bridge, that tree bridge that
Mhm.
Mhm.
fallen over like that ravine or whatever you'd call it, and he's like picking it up, shaking it, and they're falling off. I was surprised that it we saw the people like hit rocks and like
Yes.
when it's just they fall like a dummy falls and just like hits the rock and it's like wow. Even like when they're yelling when they're falling, and when they hit that rock, they stop yelling. I was like, "Ah, they paid attention."
And
Something I
then
would have figured they kind of would have just like screamed and then, oh, forgot to cut it off or something. But it was like, yeah, oh yeah, they hit the rock and they died.
there's in the novelization, you have spiders eating them. They fall in the mud. Ugh.
Yeah,
But also, I like that, um like what we were talking about earlier, like this was actually like a true adventure film, but it was actually more like Kong kind of represents, he represents like not necessarily, it's like a monster film, but it doesn't necessarily have any science fiction about it, other than the fact, it's just they're from a land that's just kind of out of time, like in their own time, like, um, this, it's just like that's just like he's just a natural animal.
Mhm,
Like Godzilla is supposed to, be a symbolism of, nuclear weapons,
mhm.
and but no, Kong is just like a regular, just 30-foot ape, and it's just like, and Matthew, you were kind of addressing on that. It's just like, what happens if we bring something from that time to our time? And it just kind of shows that how technology, you know, is the true king.
Yeah, and it's just to show that human beings shouldn't do things like that.
Hmm.
yeah,
Because that I mean, I think there's a big allegory for, like, putting animals in captivity, you know? And just I mean, the poor guys panicked the whole time. in the city. I just feel terrible. I know that that's not a big part of the novelization, but that's what I kept thinking. I'm like, this poor dude got
Yeah.
got a bunch of gas bombs thrown at him.
I know, and
Wow.
he was just a regular animal. Like he had no idea where he was, or it's like they kind of mentioned something like that in the Jurassic Park movie. Like these are creatures that don't know what century they're in, and they'll defend themselves violently if
Mhm,
needed. It was I don't know, I kind of felt a little bit more sympathy for Kong in the book. Like in the movie, he's portrayed to be, this rampaging monstrous ape, but it's this um but they act, he is an animal that is like, uh that does have some emotion,
yeah.
especially towards Anne. And it was I don't know, it was very compelling.
Mhm.
Poor Kong.
Poor
Yeah,
Kong.
poor Kong.
He was a lot smarter than they thought.
I was going to mention that I'm surprised that they added this. Like we were talking about censorship, but in they kind of show it a little bit in the 30s movie where Kong's just like ripping shreds of Anne's clothes off.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
And then
yeah.
in the novel, it's just like he like basically just like strips her naked, like, and I'm like, it was just like they,
And then she's just basically naked for a while.
I know, and just like having normal conversation with like, oh, hey guys,
I think she's described as having like the bare minimum of clothing on.
which I'm only guessing was like maybe just torn shreds of like, but anyway, um, but yeah, it was a good read. I can't really think of any issues other than like ending. Like it was just, it wasn't as fast paced as the movie, but I did like how it, faithful it was to the movie,
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
except for the spider scene.
Yeah, well, that was supposed to be in the movie, but it got
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm just like, now I'm just kind of like, come on, like I want, like, they're rebooting movies, they're remastering movies. Like let's have a Snyder cut version of 30s King Kong with
well,
that.
that's if they have the footage still, and the thing is, with when a movie's this old, it's a miracle it's still around.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's like
think of,
so
like, something like The Phantom of the Opera, which came out about 7 years before this, where I think it initially came out in 1925, and,
Oh,
like, they're still finding pieces of it.
Lon Chaney's version.
Yeah, that's of it.
Oh, Lon Chaney's version.
Yeah, that's the silent one.
see, that's
Like,
where it's
I
like
mean,
it's
there's,
hard to
like
believe. Go ahead.
there's still movies that are missing that
It's
are
what's weird to
probably
think that
destroyed.
something this old is still around, but like, oh, the original Star Wars, oh, that's gone. It's gone forever. Yeah, right. It's locked up
Well,
in a vault somewhere.
yeah, what's left of it? What's left
Yeah,
is the negative.
They
the
keep it in a
Disney Vault.
salt mine.
It's in
But the
It's
thing
in the
is,
Disney
though,
Vault.
It is.
Yeah.
It is now. Yeah.
I will say the film, yeah, of the film stock they used in the 70s deteriorates really quickly.
Okay.
So I know that it was a mess in the 90s when they did. That's one of the reasons they did this special edition. It deteriorated substantially. All three of
Yeah.
them. I think Empire had the most damage to it. Um, but yeah, it's weird. Well, they have to
Did,
have it because they have. There's a whole other cut of Star Wars somewhere that's just unwatchable.
isn't it the one where like Luke becomes emperor or something?
No, it's the original cut of A New Hope,
Oh, A New Hope. I thought
but
you.
it's in black and white. I mean, you've seen a lot of it. Like it has more scenes with Biggs. There's it's cut very in a traditional way. It's allegedly horribly boring, and that's why Star Wars had to be recut. But there's a whole finished Star Wars movie that we've never seen. But anyway, that's getting into the weeds.
Wrong, yeah.
Well, did you guys have any flaws with the novelization for Kong?
Oh, there's some funny, and not flaws, but there's some funny choices of words.
Yeah, the old word choices were a little silly.
Ejaculate.
Yeah. Or, like they use that word for like excitement or exclaimed.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wow.
Matthew
I've seen that in a modern day book.
Types in our paper movies chat. I don't think ejaculate's being used properly. I'm like, that's a matter of opinion.
That's just an old-fashioned way of saying things.
Yeah.
I do think it's kind of funny though that like we're just trying to like read a seemingly innocent novelization and we get things like this. Hey, who remembers Goldeneye?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, also, I one thing I didn't care for, and it's a product of its time. It's the characterization of the natives.
Yeah, or the Chinaman or Asian guy that was on the boat in the film, that accent that was used,
So bad.
so bad.
Oh.
Yes.
Almost as bad as the fact that you just said a racial slur.
I knew you were going to say that. It's not
It
racist.
is!
He was Chinese, wasn't he?
Yes, but you can't
Yeah,
say
so
that.
Uh,
Matthew, this is a
he's good.
generational thing right here.
Well, I'm not
Didn't
sorry
mean to,
to
everyone.
all those who would be
Don't-
offended.
Please don't cancel us.
Yeah, cancel
There.
him. Yeah, right down here. Yeah.
Why me?
No, I was pointing to Matthew.
I'm over a different channel, but
Don't cancel
flags.
paper movies.
But
I like it.
hey, King Kong, they did it first. They made the racial slur.
Yeah, it's still not okay. We don't support that. in
Nobody.
general.
Nobody.
You were pointing it out, yes. They even do that in the Peter Jackson version.
They did?
Yeah. They have that going on. And I'm like, that was like
I think he even
2005.
I could be wrong, but I think he uses like a racial slur against the tribal people too.
Well, I
Could
mean,
be
there's
wrong.
the generalization of if you've met one tribe, you've met all the tribes ever. And I'm like, oh. Well, here we go. This was definitely written in 19.
Okay, I don't know if we could actually say it out loud, but everybody check out Small Time's recent comment.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, we if you're listening to this via audio, sorry, we're not going to read that out loud. We need to do
What would you guys rate this novelization?
I'm gonna give it a B plus.
A D plus or a B plus?
B as in
Oh,
boy.
thank God. Okay, I was like, dang.
Yeah, my standards, went as high as the Empire State Building. But
They're being as high as the World Trade Center.
if the 70s version, then yes. But I enjoyed it. It was just it was pretty straightforward, but like I said, I did like that it was very faithful to the film, and it was I guess it wasn't like phenomenal. It was just good,
Yeah.
Matthew.
Matthew,
I give it a B. It's because it was good. I didn't think it was a great story because it's just, it has some very cool points. It was ahead of its time, like we talked about earlier. But Very subtle changes, not too many. If you didn't think about you didn't remind me about the spider scene, I would have completely forgotten about that after watching the film. But overall, decent story, but it's not like my go-to type of story. So I give it a B.
I'm gonna give it a 4.5 out of 5, and I'll explain. Because this, to me, is a pioneering book for novelizations.
I honestly had a feeling you were going to say something like that because
Yes.
when I picked this, I actually remember picking it with you in mind, Jeremy, because I'm just like, oh, King Kong's only like what 100 and how many pages was it again? 100. It was between 150 to 200. I'm like, oh, just like this one's actually Jeremy would give his thumbs up of approval on it.
Yes, because it's like the perfect length for what this needs to be. But
Hmm.
also, it's like the first novelization ever. This it set a standard, not knowing that it was going to set a standard for this. That three 2.5 bearded dudes would be talking about it on the internet.
Yeah.
In 2022.
That's crazy to think about.
Almost 100 years.
That's what I was just thinking too. It's almost like
I think it's like
Yeah, 90. 90 years. Yeah,
years
I
later.
pulled out the calculator. But yeah, 90 years. We're talking about this book on the internet. That is crazy.
90 years. That's wild. What if it's to the day?
then we had
That's
good
eerie
timing.
AF right there.
But yeah, to listeners, yeah, it's a good read. You'll enjoy it, but it's it's just not phenomenal. But then again, the movie necessarily isn't either. But it is classic. But
Yeah,
the the film, for its time, was good. And um,
it's a pulp.
yeah,
It's very much a pulp story. Pulp's always refreshing in an age where we have all the Chuck Wendigs and E.K. Johnsons out there, and novelizations that are overly bloated for no reason.
we'll make it through one episode where we don't mention Star Wars stuff.
Hey,
Someday.
can I read something real quick? I just looked up the novelization on Google.
Mhm.
Um, as a result of the copyright not being renewed and subsequently expiring, the novelization has been entered in the public domain on August 22nd, 2022.
Hmm.
That's incredible. Oh,
So does that mean that we can
Monetize this video.
monetize this video for what?
well, they can monetize it with the audio, probably.
But like like we can read it and monetize it. We make an audio drama of King Kong, then monetize it. We can make
Okay.
changes to it, like King Kong zombie. You can like rewrite
Well,
novelization.
Jeremy, you can do the voice for Andero.
Okay. Like this. My sick voice.
Like save me from Kong. um, wow.
We'll do that after our dramatization of Huckleberry Finn.
Yeah. Okay.
The other book I can think of. This is the puppet.
Just like that'll be like, welcome to possibly the last episode of Paper.
Audio. Turn all the
Yeah.
novelizations into audio dramas.
If only.
I heard they're actually making a novelization. I saw it on the Paper Movies Facebook page where they're actually doing a novelization of an old classic horror film, The Brain That Wouldn't Die.
Yeah, I saw that too.
You got Matthew, you know what that is?
Mm-mm.
The Brain That Wouldn't Die is a old like 50s horror film where this woman's decapitated in a car wreck and like her husband is like picks up her head and takes it to his lab and like reamps it or brings it back to life. And
Interesting.
I haven't seen the whole film, but that's
It's
the gist of.
horribly boring.
Yeah.
This is
Just
what I
just stick
remember.
with Reanimator if I want to see a severed head do things.
I will say, I think that was one of those movies my mom and I watched late night on TV, and we just made fun of it mercilessly.
Okay.
Well, as we
'Cause
learned
that's
from the
what people do.
Reanim well, Matthew, as we learned from the Reanimator discussion, it just depends on what you want the things you want to see the severed head doing.
That's true. It does so much.
Yeah.
Wow.
Um, on that note, well, yeah, that's our discussion for King Kong. Like I said, decent book. I'd recommend it. You guys pick it up if you guys are curious about it. Maybe sometime we'll read the Peter Jackson version, and then Jeremy will yell at me.
Yeah.
Because like for being a long movie, I think the book is pretty long too. Like what, 400 pages?
Yeah, it's Christy Golden too, which I can't.
Oh,
That's a lot for her.
Well, stay tuned next month where we're going to be reading a book by Wayland Drew, Willow.
Willow.
And I have
and
started. I am 25% into it.
I
cannot wait to talk
will
about this book.
be on vacation, so I will not be part of that discussion. But I am planning to do something, next month, whether it be a single cut or something. So that way I'm, doing something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, guys, thanks so much for joining us for another Paper Movies discussion. And be sure to stay tuned for updates on our Facebook page. And hope that you enjoyed the discussion and hope you guys have a good one.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
Bye.